You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Imagine being able to see every class with ease, regardless of your caseload size. Creating engaging lessons your kiddos will love. Having the ability and confidence to manage classroom behaviors. And having the know-how and tools to measure your lessons' effectiveness. If you're tired of feeling unprepared and overwhelmed and are ready to deliver amazing classroom counseling lessons, this is made for you. And if you follow the framework I'm teaching in this course, you will go from feeling stressed and overwhelmed to feeling confident and prepared as you learn how to schedule, plan, deliver, and assess your classroom counseling lessons. Head to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/class lessons to sign up right now. Thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So we're continuing our September series on class lessons. Today I want to talk about how to manage behaviors during your classroom counseling lessons. Now, behavior management was such a struggle for me when I was first starting out. I did not feel prepared. Again, I didn't have any classroom teaching experience, so I did not feel prepared on my classroom management skills and managing student behaviors. I always had this great lesson in mind, but then if anything kind of interrupted it, I was caught off guard and overwhelmed. So that's why I can't wait to share what I've learned with you in this podcast episode. Again, this is a sneak peek of my Stress-Free Class Lessons course. So my Stress-Free Class Lessons course is a 5-module framework talking all about how you can schedule, plan, teach, manage behaviors, and assess using data your classroom counseling lessons. So I'm kind of giving you a little taste of that, a little sneak peek of Module 4. Now, I, again, didn't have a lot of experience in this area, so I was like, who am I to be teaching about this? So what did I do is I hired the expert. So Gina Venancio is actually a classroom management expert, and she is a guest teacher on this module. So you'll actually be hearing her voice today as she shares strategies for managing behaviors during counseling lessons. She talks about learning connection strategies in and out of the classroom, building relationships with community building games, how to establish expectations that earn trust and respect while preventing behaviors, and how to model and practice classroom expectations with behavior-specific praise. So I know you're going to love hearing from Gina. I learned so much from her, and I know you will as well. Again, if you're interested in the whole course, because it's kind of a sneak peek, you can go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/class lessons, and I think you'll love what you see. Okay, let's dive into today's episode.
Hey guys, welcome to Lesson 3. This lesson is where everything comes together, and we talk about how to actually manage a classroom. We'll talk about things to do at the beginning of every classroom lesson, what to do when students don't follow your expectations, and how to reinforce positive behavior. In this lesson, you'll learn how to set yourself up for success, what to do if students aren't following your expectations and when they don't follow your expectations, and how to reinforce behavior that you want to see more of. So here's our agenda. First, we'll talk about reviewing your expectations at the beginning of each lesson to make sure students know what the rules are. Then we'll talk about how being consistent will help you manage disruptive behavior. And finally, we'll talk about how to use behavior-specific praise to reinforce positive behavior. So let's start with this quote. Consistency is the key to a well-managed classroom. By being consistent with both your expectations and your responses to students, you build trust with your students. They know exactly what to expect, and they know that you mean what you say. If you remember all the way back to the first lesson, we talked about how students can't learn from you until they learn to trust you. So building that trust through consistency is really the most important part of managing a classroom. So how do you build consistency? Well, consistency starts with the structure of your lessons. Having a consistent lesson structure will help students know what to expect when you come to their room for classroom lessons. You should begin each lesson by reviewing your expectations or your rules. So you're going to pull up these expectations on Google Slides if you shared them with teachers digitally, or you're going to hang up your anchor chart so this way students can reference it. You want to ask students to model what each expectation looks like and sounds like. You can either ask the whole class to do it, or you can ask for specific student volunteers. Remember, if you broke these expectations down into steps, you'll want to review all of those steps too. So this is always the first thing that you're going to do before you jump into your lesson. But what happens if students start being disruptive? Or I should say when students start being disruptive. It's time for a timeout. Not for the student, but a timeout for your lesson. The absolute worst thing you can do when you're trying to establish your expectations is to just plow through and keep going with your lesson. This is extremely hard because we all have a lot of things to teach. You have a lot of content to get through, and having to stop to redirect students means you might not get to everything that you had planned. But it's incredibly important. If a student starts being disruptive, stop your lesson. Refer back to your posted expectations and review them again with students. You might even have to practice them again. Once you notice students getting back on track, then you can resume and keep going with your lesson. You might have heard the phrase, go slow to go fast, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. It might take a lot of stopping at the beginning, but once students really internalize and understand the expectations, you won't have to stop as much, and you'll be able to get through your lessons faster. On the flip side, if you rush through this at the beginning, you will spend your entire year managing disruptions. So go slow to go fast. Finally, let's talk about how you reinforce positive student behavior. They're very popular, but you really don't need stickers, tickets, or rewards to reinforce behavior. Those are just one more thing for you to deal with when you go into a classroom. Using behavior-specific praise is as effective as rewarding students with tangible items. Really simply, behavior-specific praise is a fancy way to say, telling your students exactly what they're doing right. So when you see a student engaging in a behavior that you want to see more of, you want to immediately tell them exactly what you notice they're doing and why it's so helpful. It's really important that this happens immediately. This not only reinforces the behavior of that student, but it also lets the other students know what they should be doing. So here are some examples. The first one is, I noticed Dexter used walking feet to come to the carpet. That was safe and responsible. So in this one, I'm telling Dexter exactly what he's doing, walking to the carpet, and why it's a good choice, because it's safe and responsible. And the second one is, wow, Nico, I could tell you were upset that you didn't get called on, but instead of yelling, you stayed calm and let your friend share his idea. That was very respectful. So in this example, I'm telling Nico exactly what he's doing, staying calm and letting his friend share his idea, and why it's important, because it was respectful. Did you notice that I didn't just say, great job, Dexter, or good job, Nico? You have to be intentionally specific or it won't work. Now, this might be really uncomfortable at first, but once you practice and practice, it will become second nature. So what can you do to make sure you're ready to effectively manage a classroom? First, make sure your expectations are created in a way that you can display them in every class you go to, whether that's sharing them with teachers on Google Slides or laminating them and bringing them with you on chart paper. It's important that you have these displayed so you can review them before every lesson and you can refer back to them if students are engaging in disruptive behavior. Then practice using behavior-specific praise. Like I said, it will feel really weird at first. If you feel like you're being too specific, then you're probably doing it right. Practice on your dog, your kids, your spouse, your mom. Anytime you can squeeze some practice in, do it, and it will soon become second nature. And that's it for lesson 3. In this lesson, you learned how to set yourself up for success, what to do if students aren't following your expectations, and how to reinforce expected student behavior. That's the end of Module 4. Thank you so much for learning with me. I hope that you learned some tips and strategies to help you feel confident and prepared to manage behaviors during classroom counseling lessons. Enjoy the rest of the course.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.